Yellow. I'm Selena.
What was that? Okay, no.
Just let me have the fun.
All right.
Are you going to introduce yourself?
Oh, that was your introduction. Super distracting. I'm Marissa.
And this is Just Look Vlog by Abundance of Hope. Today we are talking about over-policing of the Black community.
Yes.
It's a super bummer, first of all.
Yeah, but also it's like a no-brainer for those of us who live that reality where police are not seen as the savior and silver servant. I don't know how that was a thing, serve and protect. I know that it used to be a thing, but not ever did I feel served or protected by police officers. Not my mom that I know of has ever felt served or protected by police officers. No one that I really personally know has ever felt served and protected by police officers that they've told me. So,
yeah, I feel like when I think about policing of the Black community, I obviously think about literal police who come in and police our community. But I also think about how then we start being policed everywhere, even not by police. You know what I mean? We get policed, especially as a black woman, presenting person. Like, I'm policed so often, especially if I take time to reflect on it. Like, the way that I talk will be policed, what I wear will be policed.
My value, my tone.
Literally everything.
The specific word choices, literally everything.
Absolutely. And what I find is we end up being, especially when it comes to Black women and Black children, especially girls, we become policed instead of protected, right? So it's like, that's all anyone knows how to do is police our body.
Yeah.
They don't know how to protect us.
It will always be in the word of, oh, I just want to protect them. Or like they're trying to prevent some harm, but at the same time doing very great harm with all the policing.
Yeah, and that's what I think of when I think of policing. It's like this double-edged sword where Black girls get stabbed by both ends.
Wow.
So it's like, it's crazy when I think about policing. But obviously, like, even as individuals we're policed, and then think about the Black community on a larger scale, we are policed.
Super policed. Like, literally.
Like, it's ridiculous. Even we'll end up having, like, you know, the respectability politics thing that only ever comes up if you're a Black woman. Like, these are all ways in which we become policed in society by people who are not policed because of the over-policing of our community. And I don't feel like people ever... Or, I mean, they probably do, but I don't feel like we're talking about it enough.
We certainly don't. The thing is, it even makes me think of other communities, too, are super over-policed. And then it makes you think of the power dynamics, and then it goes into racism, and then it goes into who actually has the privilege to do the policing, and who is... You know, marginalized communities get policed. Black people specifically get policed. The only people that I don't know that are heavily policed are, you guessed it, white people, because they're literally the ones who are receiving of all the privilege. And so they're usually also the ones policing, whether they're policing a Muslim person for wearing a hijab, or they're policing a Latinx person for speaking Spanish, or they're, you know what I mean? Like, so yes, so much policing, and also, like, I feel like that dynamic comes into play when we see cases of police brutality, because it's usually the Black people that are on the receiving end of that police brutality.
Like, because they've been policed there, and then they're additionally policed.
And and then it also makes me think about how we'll conversely see the interactions of white police officers with white people, and then the interactions with police officers, even if they're, like, not white, with Black people. Like, that even hones in even more on the policing, because the policing looks different. You're not as policed as a white person, you know what I mean? Like, even in that. And then over policed as a person of color, as a Black person specifically. It's the power dynamics, right? And then all these institutions being woven into racism, and obviously the policing of Black people has colonial roots.
Yeah, and for me, it just like it has to round back to, again, abolishing police and investing in community, because when it's about that mind state. Like, people are so used to seeing Black people policed that all they can imagine is Black people being policed. once that's no longer an option, you can't even imagine policing a black person anymore. Then you have to think about, well, what else can I do by black people? You know what I mean? And there's so much more, you know what I mean? You can grow with black people. You can change things with black people. You know what I mean? You can organize with black people. You can protect black people instead of just policing them. There's so many more avenues that we're allowed to move in. And again, for me, it also ties back to decolonizing, because the way that we think is so colonized. Like, police have never protected us, but for some reason when we think of protection, we're supposed to think of police. That's colonialization. Like, that doesn't even make any sense for our bodies. That doesn't make any sense for our lived experience.
A certain situation where it's like, I knew that I couldn't call the police for help, but I'm like, but fuck, I have to call the police, because if I don't call the police, then I'm gonna get in trouble for not calling the police, even though I need help, but I know the police isn't gonna help me. You know what I mean? So it's deep. We gotta decolonize the way that we think. And then even with like over policing, colonial roots, racism. Like, if we get rid of racism, we can get rid of all of these things that are all encompassed by racism. And over policing of black community is one of those things.
Absolutely. And then we get to imagine and build and live in these societies where we're not policing each other.
Exactly.
Where we're actually protecting each other, organizing together, growing together, sustaining together, which is what we actually need communities to be able to do.
Exactly.
Not police each other.
And
That's not helping nobody.
And police hinders that. They create a barrier to all the goals that we feel like we have. All the places, the world could just be this way, you know, how everyone just wants the world to be. And then little do they know, like, in order for us to get to the world to just be this way, there's a lot of things that we need to get rid of.
Yeah, we actually just talked about how defunding the police, it just opens up a world of money that we can then use
for
to help the community,
more beneficial things.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's all a part of dismantling, decolonizing, and then creating a world that actually benefits the majority of the people who live in it. Because again, colonialism has us thinking this world that only benefits a few of us is the only way that the world can live. The only way that the world can function is in a way that doesn't benefit most of its people.
Right. And then restructuring it is just so far-fetched and just...
It's like, no, it's possible. We can do it. We should do it. We are doing it.
Yeah.
So it is all linked to policing. It's all linked to it. And that's why we have to decolonize.
Decolonize and stop over policing black community.
Yeah, and on that note, I do feel like there's an individual responsibility that we have. Yes. Often I'm checking myself to say, you know, what is my internalized anti-blackness? Because for me, internalized anti-blackness leads to over-policing black people. Right? Especially
ourselves.
Black people. Yeah, that makes it where you can't escape it. Because even when you're in your safest spaces, which are going to be all black people, you're still going to be over-policed if anti-blackness is present.
Yep.
And so that's why for me, I have to check my interactions, my thought patterns, my choices that I'm making and say, am I being anti-black? Is there any anti-blackness around what I'm doing? How can I be critical of it? Because at the end of the day, anti-blackness don't serve me. Don't serve you. Don't serve the majority of the people we serve. Actually, no one. It doesn't serve any of the people we serve. And anti-blackness ultimately doesn't serve
anyone,
earth.
Period.
It doesn't serve anyone. So we have to be individually accountable, and then we have to be accountable as a community to resisting the over-policing and ultimately internalized anti-blackness.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, so that's all I got on the policing, the over-policing specifically of the black community.
Yep, we have to challenge it. We got to stop doing it. We have to challenge it in ourselves, because I will find moments where I'll literally be over-policing myself because of the ways in which the world will police me.
Yeah, and now that we're like channeling down the conversation, I just thought of something else. Find organizations that you can use to replace these oppressive institutions.
Policing.
There are so many community-led organizations, that are about recidivism reduction, that are about rehabilitation, that are about homelessness prevention. So there are services available. Like if you need conflict resolution, if you know what I mean. Like there are other ways in which we can serve our community that does not include policing our community.
Yeah,
and that's my last point.
Basically, the thing is, I think of because this is my last point too. We think of like the cures and then the Band-Aid fixes. Like, what are the Band-Aid fixes and what are the cures? Policing is the Band-Aid. Kind of. It's a dirty Band-Aid. Policing is a dirty Band-Aid. And that will make sure
infection on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The dirty Band-Aid is policing. But the cure is community organizations that can actually come and cure these things, like the over-criminalization of mental illness, the over-criminalization of addiction, the over-criminalization of homelessness, the over-criminalization of poverty.
Yeah.
Like, all these things in which police, contributes to that, and then organizing and resources and then services.
Funding is poured into that policing instead of into serving our communities. So it has to change.
Yeah, so that was my last point. And the conclusion is we need to stop the over policing of marginalized communities, period.
Period. Decolonize, dismantle.